Right, I'd like to call to order the regular meeting of the Common Council of the City of Platteville for Tuesday, January 14th, 2020, and we'll start with roll call.
Eileen Nichols.
Here.
Barbara Stockhausen. Here. Jason Artz.
Here.
Barbara Doss is excused. Ken Killian.
Here.
Robin Klein.
Here.
Isaac Shanley.
Here.
I think most of you in the audience this evening probably are aware of this, but we do have a small green sheet that if you'd like to speak on a topic on our agenda this evening, or just in general, if you would fill that out, please, and give it to our city clerk. She will then bring it over to me. So the first item this evening is consideration of the consent calendar. The following items may be approved on a single motion and vote due to their routine nature or previous discussion. Please indicate to the council president if you would prefer separate discussion and action. First is council minutes from our December 10th, 19 regular meeting. B is payment of bills. C is financial report for December. D is appointments to boards and commissions. I have none this evening. E is licenses, temporary Class B to sell fermented malt beverages to Roundtree Gallery at 120 West Main Street for Fifth Friday Happy Hour on January 31st from 4:30 p.m. to 7:30 p.m. Next is 1 year and 2 year operator licenses to sell or serve alcohol. And the third is the taxi vehicle and driver's licenses. And then the last item is a banner permit for the Platteville Fire Department pancake breakfast on March 23rd to April 5th. So the banner will be up that long. All right. Is there a motion to approve the consent calendar?
I move to approve all the items listed under the consent calendar.
Second.
We have a motion and a second, and we'll vote.
Nichols.
Yes.
Stockhausen.
Yes.
Artz.
Yes.
Killian.
Yes.
Klein.
Yes.
Shanley.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right. Next is citizens' comments, observations, and petitions, if any. And from what I'm seeing so far, what I have is people who are interested in the ATV, UTV discussion. Okay. And I don't think there's anyone else in the public that is asked to speak, but we are pleased this evening to ask our city manager, Adam Rucco, to just introduce himself to the public.
Hi. So yes, obviously I'm Adam Riegel. I'm the new city manager. I started on the 6th, so I've been here 7 days now, and it's been amazing. Basically what I've been doing is kind of over the past 7 days here, have been working with our tremendous staff here and kind of getting to know them better and learning what, specific initiatives and tasks that they're working on. And then I've been meeting with the council president and pro temp to kind of learn some of the things that the council are tackling, and kind of the next kind of few months here are going to be just kind of getting inundated with everything that is Platteville, and hopefully the family is planning to join me down here in March, and then we'll officially be 100% here in Platteville. But I'm excited to kind of get officially involved in everything and go to the different committees and commissions. I've been doing a lot of that the last 2 weeks here, going to a lot of the meetings and just kind of learning what the topics are and keep on running. So again, I appreciate the opportunity to be the city manager, and I'm looking forward to being here for a long time.
Thank you and welcome. Next item is reports in our packet, board, commission, and committee minutes. Zoning Board of Appeals, Klein.
Nothing to add.
Airport Commission would be Dawes, and she is excused this evening. Redevelopment Authority Board, I have nothing to add. Police and Fire Commission, Klein.
Nothing to add.
Water and Sewer Commission, Nichols, Killian, or Shanley.
No addition.
None.
Community Safe Routes Committee, Arts.
Nothing to add.
Parks, Forestry, and Recreation Committee, Arts.
Also nothing to add.
All right. Other reports in our packet include the Water and Sewer Financial Report for December, the Airport Financial Report for December, and Department Progress Reports. Are there any questions or comments on any of those reports? All right, hearing none, then I guess we'll go on to our first action item, which is ordinance 2001 ATV, UTV, and route designation. We've had quite a few meetings on this topic already, and we have a lot of people this evening who are interested in speaking, or they've registered for or against. Any council comments before I ask people to come up and give their comments?
I think for me, throughout this whole discussion, the things that have stood out the most are kind of the safety issues, and then also how this is going to be enforced in terms of traffic laws, traffic penalties. for me, the reason why right now I'm not for opening all streets or having all streets access, for the safety reasons. So as I'm looking up in terms of the training needed, the safety course that you have to pass for ATVs, on the DNR website, it's a strictly online course, and it said that usually people, if they do it kind of all in one sitting, you can get it done in about 3 to 4 hours. And I verified this with the DNR representative as well, in terms of, is there any field component to this where you have to go out and actually operate a machine? The representative that I spoke to at the DNR said that you can take the online course and you can get your safety certification in terms of operating an ATV without ever having stepped on an actual machine. So that is concerning to me, especially if we're looking at adding ATVs to streets. I know we've gone back and forth in terms of like, are they safe on roads? Are they engineered correctly to be on roads? But I think when it comes down to it, just as a motorcycle, it's going to operate differently on paved surfaces versus off-road surfaces. And if there's nothing in place to kind of help people learn how to do that, to kind of learn the differences between that, that's concerning to me. On the other hand, in Wisconsin, with motorcycles, the basic motorcycle safety foundation course, which you can take that to get your motorcycle endorsement on your license, or the other option is you can just go to the DMV, sign up for a motorcycle specific road test. And both of those options you'll be able to get your motorcycle endorsement, which is in addition to the driver's license that you already have. So if you take the basic motorcycle safety foundation course, the first component is a 3-hour online course. Then after that, you have a 5-hour formal classroom session where you're working with a trained instructor, going over classroom stuff. And then there's a 10-hour field course where you're going out on a controlled course. You're operating the machines, you're driving motorcycles, you're learning defensive maneuvers, you're learning how motorcycles respond differently on pavement compared to regular motor vehicles. And I think, especially if we're looking at if this is something that is going to continue to gain popularity, it's going to be something that we're looking at expanding. That safety piece, the differences there are pretty striking when you look at what you need to do in order to operate a motorcycle on the road versus what you need to do to operate an ATV on the road. The other thing too, and this has come up, and I've mentioned this, is just the enforcement. Because the ATVs are, they're registered with the DNR, even if they're on public streets, even if they're in our city, they're still only held to DNR penalties, which means there's no points against your license. Whereas if you're riding a motorcycle, even a dual sport motorcycle, which you can ride on and off road, you still have to register that motorcycle with the DMV, with the DOT, and you're subject to all penalties that traditional motor vehicles are subject to. The other thing is too, the last thing that I'm going to mention is that the original argument going back to the June, I believe it was June 2018, the first public forum, one of the main arguments that was brought forth by proponents of this was that opening up ATV routes in Platteville was going to greatly impact businesses in terms of new business revenue and also impact and increase tourism. However, over the past year, since this ATV ordinance has been enacted, I had asked for numbers prior to kind of having this discussion. No numbers were provided. And actually, the couple businesses that did provide information said that there was no impact one way or the other. So I think in terms of looking at, especially, again, expanding routes to include the entire city, I really want, especially now, to have numbers. I want to know, like, is there really an economic impact? Is there an impact on tourism in terms of numbers? We can sit here and say, yeah, it's going to be good for business. Tourists are going to come into Platteville. It's going to be great. However, if we don't have numbers, if we're not documenting that, it's hard to support that, and it's hard to kind of look at being able to expand this, and especially given the other concerns that have been brought forth. So that's kind of the last comments that I want to make on this and kind of where I stand on this issue. Again, those three things that I brought up are really kind of what I've been basing a lot of my decision on and where I'm at in terms of ATV routes in Platteville. Thank you.
Any other council member like to make a comment before we have comments from people in the audience this evening?
I'd say one of the things against the economics part is there has been some growth. To exactly what it is hard to tell. And obviously, we weren't expecting it to be within the first year a major growth. I mean, like anything else, that it takes time for things to catch on and for the benefits of it. One of the reasons that it's hard to see what the growth is because of an ATV or UTV rider is when they come to a store or a gas station or wherever, they're pretty much wearing the same clothes as what you're wearing right now. So unless you have somebody that is sitting there looking out the window, or a person tells you that they're on one, you would never see or know that they came to your store in an ATV or UTV. The second thing is, from the last year to this year, the university campus is down 375 students. So with the loss of those students, their families, friends coming in and spending money, it's hard to make up or to know the balance between the income that we lost from them and the income that we've gained from the ATV UTV usage. So
My question to that then is when, especially Grant County, says that, ATV opening up all these roads, like it brings in money. If you're saying that there's no way to track it, how are we tracking it?
I didn't say there's no way to track it. It's tough to track it. And as how Grant County did, I'm not sure how they did their numbers.
Okay.
So.
Right. Any other council member? All right, I'm going to start just randomly here. Clay Schaefer has asked to speak in favor. You have a lot of people who've asked to speak, so if you can keep your, yes, up here, please, to the microphone, and when you come up, please give your name and your address.
Hi. Nice to meet you.
My name is Clay Schaefer. I live at 945 Seymour Street. I was asked by a few people in town to address the issue. We did the first time, and I'd like to address it tonight. Specifically, Mr. Arts, you mentioned the word enforcement. And I think as a history teacher, one thing I like to do when we're dealing with a problem is to go back and study the history of the issue and what has happened in the past. I called the police department up this morning, and Chief, there you are, young lady named Sarah, very kind young lady, very helpful. My kudos to you and your staff. Sarah gave me some statistics. Last year, or rather from the time period of, let's see here, September 5th, 2018 to November 5th of 2019. During that time period, I asked her for citations and violations dealing with enforcement. She gave me the fact that with cars, trucks, and motorcycles within the city limits of Platteville, the officers in our community issued approximately 976 citations. And I said, what about warnings? And she said, it would take me quite a bit of time to add those up, but she said literally it would be in the thousands during that time period. 976 citations for speeding, whatever it was. And I said, now, Sarah, could you be kind enough to give me information on ATVs and UTVs? How many people violated the municipal laws and were cited for violations and enforcements within the city of Platteville? She said there was one in June and one in August. We also had 29 warnings. Now, half of those warnings were from, she said, one individual who has a four-wheeler who likes to plow out the neighborhood and didn't have the proper lights on his vehicle. Well, I'm not sure that's a major violation, but that's what a warning was given to. Likewise, there were no snow lights on, mirrors that were not on some ATVs, no helmets on a few people, and they were given warnings because when it first came out, people weren't sure where the routes were. And I'm sure that will continue also. Now, I was an old history teacher, I wasn't real good in math, but you take a look at 976 violations versus 2, that's pretty major one way or the other. So you're asking, sir, about violations and enforcement. I think these people have done a very good job enforcing themselves and policing themselves. I'm not sure about the economics involved in that. I'm not here to discuss that and deal with that. But I know that, and I don't have a horse in the race. I don't own a vehicle. But my son-in-law does. And he's not going to put my grandchildren in harm's way. These people have done their job. They've done it very, very well. And they have policed themselves extremely well. Now, I've heard comments from people in town saying, I don't want these vehicles down my street. Well, I live on Seymour Street up in the north end, and my property goes to the curb. I don't own the street. I pay taxes for the street, but my taxes go to all the streets in town. I can't control who goes up and down that street. You people determine who can go up and down those streets. Not I. We're not the citizens in town. You people decide that. And I think they have warranted the fact they've been good, responsible citizens. And they should be given the benefit of the doubt to increase their routes around town. Okay? I want to thank you for your time and hope you consider this in favor of the ATV and UTV people. Thank you.
Thank you. Next in favor, Kathy Kopp.
Sorry, Eileen, I didn't hear you. I'm Kathy Kopp. I live at 415 North 2nd Street here in town. And I am here representing the Platteville Regional Chamber tonight to speak in favor of the ATV UTV ordinance. Specifically, one of the things that I would like to address is the economics and tourism things. I understand that we all look at the economics, and businesses are expecting to see a return. The community at large is expecting. The chamber has supported the ordinance for ATV UTVs since day one. It is the fastest growing outdoor recreation in the state of Wisconsin. Roads and streets are opening up across the state, and I would like to just comment on Mr. Schaefer's comments. I agree. The ATV, UTV users, and I have been in contact with a number of them since the ordinance went into place, are extremely good at policing themselves. And from an economic standpoint, when you ask the question, well, how do we monitor that? There are ways of doing that, but it takes time. Now, I'm scheduled to be here a month from now to present the 2019 Annual Tourism Entity Report. The documentation that I will be bringing part of it is the economic impact report that we received from the Department of Tourism that is broken down by county. Now, last year, and we do not receive those numbers for the current year, so the numbers that I will be bringing are from 2018. The Department of Tourism enlists a company that does the economics, and it is validated by the Department of Revenue. So it's not just willy-nilly numbers. How they arrive at that, I do not know. But the numbers come out a year after. So I'm anticipating that any increase in economics for Grant County for 2019, we're not going to even know about until May. But what I can tell you personally is at our Welcome Center, we had a number of ATVers come to the Welcome Center. They were a hoot. We had people came in, there was a group of them that trailered their machines in, They were absolutely thrilled to find out that Platteville had opened some streets, and you could tell they came in, they had been on a trail and weren't aware that they were coming from Greene County, weren't aware that our streets were open. They stopped. We had the maps, we had all the rules, and we impress upon people, if you want the streets to remain open, please follow the rules, and here they are, and we would cover them with them. These people were so excited because they said that they had no idea that Platteville was open, but that they were going to be coming back. They came in, they were filthy. You could tell they were wearing the goggles. They had the goggles up, and the only clean place on their face was their eyes. But they could not say enough good things. And there was a group of probably 5 machines, maybe 10, 12 people. Really super nice, respectful people. They were not out partying. They were out for a weekend drive. And so we take our responsibility at the Chamber as a welcome center very seriously, making sure that visitors that come have the rules, have the maps, and that we reinforce the fact that if you want to keep them open, please follow the rules. So with that, the Chamber is, again, very much in favor of the city continuing the use of and opening streets to ATV, UTV use. Thank you.
Thank you.
Eileen, could I have a quick chance to just clarify my stance?
Sure, go ahead.
So where I'm coming from is I'm not saying that they're going to be violating traffic laws. What I'm saying is that if a traffic law is violated, people on an ATV it's not enforced the same way as a regular motor vehicle. If you get pulled over for speeding, if you get pulled over for an OWI on an ATV on a public street, all you get is a fine. It doesn't go against your record. It doesn't take any points off your license. That's kind of what I'm focusing on in terms of enforcement. It's more so that versus, people coming in and being reckless and that. I just want consistency in terms of how vehicles are regulated and the penalties that they pay if they're using the streets. Thanks.
All right, we don't have anyone else who's actually asked to speak in favor, but we do have a number of people who've registered, so I'm just going to read off their names. Tina Lynch, Bill Iverson, Loris LeConte, Christine Salas, Robert Digman, Chad Digman, and also Jimmy Bogardus. Is that right? Did you register? Yeah. Okay, and your name is? Loris LeConte. Okay, and you did not put that you wanted to speak, but you would like to speak? Yeah. All right, sure, come on up. I will change your green sheet. Name and address, please.
Loris LeConte, Platteville, Wisconsin, Highway 151, out of town. I enjoy coming and riding four-wheeler, UTV. I don't think we're really asking for all the streets to be opened. If we could get them open for a period of time, common sense wise, as far as time, not dusk to dawn or whatever that is nowadays, but it also gets you from like Belmont to Cuba City, or from there to Yoder's over that way. It helps get them through this area, because right now it's just a dead end. I mean, it doesn't look very good on the map that Platteville's the only one that doesn't get along with this. Number two, I ride motorcycles, and there was an incident. I saw a four-wheeler come down a hill, and I went down, I got on my bike, and I went after him, and I said, hey, I pulled him over, says that is not a trail. So we do police ourselves. I mean, we want this to go through. I mean, we don't want anybody to get hurt. I mean, I think it's just, and it takes time to see what it actually does for your community. I really think it does. I mean, it's like a self-employed person. You don't start making money till 3, 4, 5 years into your business. Same with this here. It's gonna take that long, but you need to have the knowledge out there that people, oh, okay, it's open. And go from there. All right, thank you.
Right, we've also had people who have asked to speak against. Christina Fields?
Hi, nice to meet you.
Okay, Christina Fields, 945 7th Avenue. And I'm here today to remind you of the focus of safety of what occurs on our streets versus economics. So I have provided my comments at the last 2 informational meetings on the ATV-UTV proposal in Platteville, and was certainly encouraged by some of the council members' realization that indeed ATV-UTVs are off-road vehicles, and as such have not been designed to the safety standards warranted and do not belong in our residential neighborhoods, near our schools, parks, and pool. At previous meetings, I've heard questions about why bicycles and farm equipment are allowed on the roadway, and isn't that the same thing as allowing ATVs and UTVs on them? And in fact, no. So to clarify, the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration is the federal organization that identifies the safety standards that all roadworthy vehicles must comply to. They're a division of the U.S. Department of Transportation. These are the folks that alert you to the recalls on the brakes, tires, and airbags that we hear about in the news, and receive letters if we have purchased a vehicle that's been recalled. These same folks identify the crashworthiness of our vehicles, and they do a lot of other things for us. So they have identified that the following vehicles are analyzed and researched on their roadworthiness and crashworthiness. So automobiles, of course, motorcycles, school buses, heavy vehicles, bicycles, farm equipment, and not ATVs and UTVs, because they're not designed to be used on public streets. They also analyze, research, and certify vehicle equipment such as child safety seats, airbags, tires, and seatbelts. And they conduct research on crashworthiness of all of these different types of vehicles at a variety of speeds, at a variety of different angles, in order to ensure that the driving public is as safe as possible when there is a crash. There's volumes of material about this research, and it's continuous. So our highest organization of federal safety standards do not certify that ATV-UTVs are roadworthy, and that means that civil engineers who designed Platteville's roadways have not designed the roadways to safely accommodate them. The Public Works Director has stated that he has not certified that Platteville roads can safely accommodate them. And since the ATV-UT manufacturers themselves state that their own vehicles should not be operated on public roadways, and since the Wisconsin DNR statistics showed that in 2017, 65% of Wisconsin ATV-UTV fatalities have occurred on public roadways, and last council packet, you received information from the University of Iowa College of Medicine, whose primary research is ATV related, and on ATV injury and prevention. And the research urged you not to open the public streets to ATV and UTV use. It seems obvious that council should not approve the use of ATV UTV use on our public roadways in Platteville. Furthermore, at the last meeting, Evan Larson clarified that the comparable cities of Lancaster, Cassville, and Cuba City are actually not comparable, as Platteville's population is 3 to 12 times the size of those towns, and the median age is 22 years old in this town versus in the 50s in these others. We are a university town whose younger demographic age should not have free range driving ATVs and UTVs in our neighborhoods. At times, they lack common sense. Council, thank you for taking this matter seriously. Safety is much more important than economics and access, and I support your vote against the ATV UTV use in Platteville, and specifically not in residential neighborhoods, near schools, parks, and the pool. Thank you.
Thank you. Also speaking against, Amy Seaboth Wilson.
Hi, everybody. Amy Seaboth Wilson, 555 North Water Street. Thanks for hearing me tonight. I know I've been here talking before, so I'll be a little redundant for the sake of everybody who might not have heard me before. Apologies to the council. I wanted to begin by just saying this is a topic that I'm pretty passionate about. I'm trained in urban planning. I have training in transportation planning specifically. It's something I've thought about a lot for decades. Well, not decades, a little over a decade is when my training began, but at least a while now. And so bear with me as I'm passionate about this issue. I wanted to begin by sharing that we did do, I put a petition online about a month and a half ago on change.org. So I wanted to share that the petition asked the council not to extend routes. And you guys can read it, I'll pass it down. 54 people signed it. Most appeared to be from Platteville. When it gives the location, some of the IP addresses, I think, make it look like it came from another city. So you may or may not know the names. You can identify them yourselves. Here you go, Isaac. And then I wanted to add, I realize this is a personal issue for a lot of people because it's people's hobbies and it's a way we enjoy our time. And I totally appreciate that and respect that. And I know that nobody in this room would ever intentionally hurt anybody. And I know that as a group, I believe that the ATVers do intend to self-regulate and help create a good culture of support. The fine print, I guess, that I just want to point out is that ATVs are developed and made to be off-road. I know Christina mentioned that, Jason's mentioned it. They haven't had to meet the same regulatory standards as regular on-road motorized vehicles. So motorcycles even have to meet more stringent standards than do ATVs. So things like the center of gravity on an ATV is different because it's meant to bounce on off roads, and the grit on the tires make it not handle well along turns on roads at a high speed, 25 miles per hour being a high speed. These are all things I am not an expert in, but I read a lot of people who talked about those being very distinct differences. And then I went and actually looked at the regulations myself, which Christina mentioned, but it's called the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration comes up with all the rules and regulations for how you can mechanically make a vehicle safe for motorized traffic. ATVs are not considered a motorized vehicle for roads, so they don't have to meet those standards. So fundamentally, they're built for a different purpose, which is why they all have warnings on them advising you to not use them on roads, right? Then the next level of policy that they get to bypass is the Federal Highway Administration, which engineers road design to make sure that the vehicles using the roads are complementing one another. So that's including signage heights, etc., for the heights of people in the vehicle. It's talking about roads more than the mechanicals. ATVs aren't compliant with those because, again, they're not considered an on-road vehicle. And then the third level of regulation that I'm aware of that ATVs get to bypass is the Department of Transportation. So that's the group that, oversees driver's license, DWIs, ODWIs, that sort of stuff. ATVs, again, not being considered a motorized vehicle, bypass all those rules that I have to use when I drive my car, motorcyclists have to use when they drive their motorcycle. Collectively, that's concerning to me that we're basically allowing a giant loophole to occur in our community. So I called around a little bit to find out professional thoughts on that. I called the Wisconsin Department of Transportation's ATV UTV specialist, and he told me that the DOT doesn't have an official position on it, which makes sense. We already knew that. They said they leave it up to local governments. He did say, though, that it's a trial and error phase, right? That each community is up to their own to figure out if it's worth it for them. So that was what I could get from him. Then I called the Wisconsin Assurance Alliance. I'll say it again, Wisconsin Insurance Alliance. And they're the group that is like an umbrella for all the different insurance agencies within our state. And they said there's not enough data yet to understand how dangerous ATV UTVs are. So for any of you who've ever worked in insurance, you know that how you come up with insurance policies is by documenting death and injury. That happens, eventually you get to a place where you decide this is dangerous because enough people have died, and then you create more stringent insurance rules that then impact the mechanical construction of the machine. So the Insurance Alliance has said not enough people have been injured yet, which could be good or bad, but basically they have no formal position on it yet. They were aware of Platteville though, and they said we're one of the very few communities in Wisconsin that have encouraged or required insurance for ATV, UTV users, which is cool. That's awesome. And then he went on to say that because ATV, UTVs are not standardized enough within the insurance industry, there's no singular policy governing what good insurance looks like. Correct me if I'm wrong, but basically when you insure your ATV, UTV, it's not a standard template that everybody uses. So some people might insure it through their farm, for example, that your ATV, UTV is insured while on farm, but it may not be insured when you go off the farm. And that the fine print of your insurance policy is really important, and how we as a community might govern that is very confusing for him to have understood. So then the final point I wanted to make is, again, back to the population size. I dug around a little bit on what communities in Wisconsin have done this by population, because I know that's come up a few times. And Reedsburg's recently done it. They're pretty big, 9,200. Reedsburg's bigger than I thought. They're not quite as big as us, and they don't have a college. Prairie du Chine's done it, 5,911 people. There might be other communities that I'm not aware of, but that's what I and the DOT were able to come up with as the biggest communities in Wisconsin. None of them have a college again. My point isn't so much about size. My point is about precedence, right? And a lot of times I'm the person who's asking for change and saying we should be the leader, we can do cool things. In this instance, you guys have all said that it takes time to understand the impacts of this decision, right? From an economic development standpoint, et cetera. And I totally agree, it takes time. From my transportation planning and my risk aversion, I just feel that there's a really important calculation that this council has to make about the cost benefit of this. And I get that it could have an economic benefit, awesome. I also understand that it can come at a risk, right, for people using our roads, especially non-ATV users, the people who might be coincidental to an accident. And so in that sense, that's why I'm asking council to take this decision very seriously. It seems like the Main Street route that's existing right now helps create connectivity through our community that people from most routes can get through Platteville to other places, also access the majority of our businesses, but not necessarily go very far into our residential neighborhoods and create potentially undue issues. So as somebody who does live on one of the potential routes you're discussing, I really strongly ask that we consider leaving these routes as is and not expanding them. Thank you.
Thank you. Another person asking to speak against Bob Harding.
Bob Harding, 730 North Water Street. I'd like to speak of helmet safety as it relates to ATV, UTVs. The injury most responsible for death on ATV, UTV fatalities is a traumatic brain injury. This is a subject I have a lot of experience with. There is no cure for traumatic brain injury. Prevention is the only cure. Helmets and seatbelts can help prevent TBIs and save lives. I know this for a fact. I was in a road race on my bicycle when a truck pulling a trailer passed me in a no passing zone. I was either knocked down or fell down, and the wheels of the trailer ran over my head. My helmet saved my life. My accident did leave me with a traumatic brain injury I will have for the rest of my life. After my accident, I had to go through occupational therapy, speech therapy, physical therapy. My left side was paralyzed. I slowly regained the use of my arm. I had to relearn how to walk. You do not recover from a traumatic brain injury. You can only rebuild. I served as a member of the Eastern Iowa Brain Injury Alliance Board of Directors. I met survivors, myself included, who wished at the time they would have died rather than spend the rest of their lives in a wheelchair or paralyzed from a traumatic brain injury. I urge you to read the editor's comment in a December 4th, 2019 Platteville Journal. Here we go again article that refers to the ATV, UTV safety issue here in Platteville. According to the editor, in an attempt to justify the unsafe use of ATVs, UTVs on paved city streets, life is risky in every possible sense. Quote, everyone dies at some point. In the same newspaper, council member Robin Klein is quoted. She felt defensive on the idea that it's on our conscience because that's living. The people who get on the ATV make their choices. As a member of the City Council, while allowing ATV UTVs on paved city streets, you are facilitating these choices for the ATV UTV operators by making hazards, injuries, risk of death more available by allowing these vehicles not designed for paved roads to be on paved roads, possibly all paved roads within our city. When has the risk of death or a serious injury from an ATV UTV accident prevailed over the safety of our citizens and visitors to our city? How can you possibly justify the philosophy of everyone dies at some point? What have we gained by allowing these vehicles on all city streets? There's a reason the manufacture of three-wheel ATVs have been banned. They were deemed to be too dangerous for the public. Yet, in spite of warnings from neurosurgeons, emergency room doctors, and even some manufacturers, you want to allow vehicles not designed for paved roads with no turn signals who require a longer stopping distance than cars on our streets, all streets in Platteville year-round. If you're over 18, a helmet is not required for passengers or operators of ATV UTVs. Of the 22 deaths from ATV UTVs in 2019, 9 victims were not wearing a seatbelt. 18 were not wearing a helmet. I worked for over 20 years with engineers and designers. One of the most important lessons I learned is that you cannot out-engineer or out-design stupidity. Stupidity will win every time. If you make the decision to ride a bike without a helmet, or to operate or ride in an ATV, UTV without a seatbelt or a helmet, you've proved my point. Seatbelts and helmets are engineered and designed to save your life. It should be required by the City of Platteville that all ATV, UTV operators and passengers wear a helmet. From the Polaris website, UTV and ATV helmet buying guides, all off-road vehicle riders should always wear a helmet. They're the most critical piece of safety gear. I do not want anyone to have a brain injury or worse, like me, a traumatic brain injury, when a helmet would have prevented the injuries. Please wear a helmet. Do not increase the ATV, UTV routes within the city. Thank you.
Thank you. We also have had individuals who have asked to speak. Let me just check in, make sure I've got everybody. Have 2 individuals who would like to register against the ATV, UTV route, Marilyn Gottschalk and also Roger Gottschalk. Then I have individuals who have asked to speak for information purposes only. Danica Larson?
Danica Larson, 1010 7th Avenue. I first want to thank you for your reflection and extensive discussion on the ATV and UTV ordinance. This is a difficult topic for a local government to engage in because the root of the issue is that the manufacturers of ATVs and UTVs and state governments should provide and require adequate safety training that teaches users how to operate them on paved roads and in communities. I hope you will consider the option to wait to pass an ordinance until these safety trainings, specifically covering paved road and in-town usage, exist. Thank you.
Thank you. Evan Larson. Informational only.
Evan Larson, 1010 7th Avenue. Hello again, and thanks for having me back. I too would appreciate the length of conversation that you've taken to have on this. I think it's an important topic, and I think that people are taking it really seriously. I will start by saying that if looking at the maps that are online, the 3 options, if I were to be in your seat and if I were to vote, recognizing that our community includes a range of perspectives, my vote would be for the base routes minus Ridge with potential extension up to Old Lancaster. To go over a few points that have come up again and again and again, we recognize that There has not been enough time for economic benefit, but that also means there has not been enough time to adequately assess risk. We all agree that these vehicles are not designed for pavement, that they are at greater risks of accidents if driven on pavement, that the vast majority of riders in our community and in the clubs are safe and respectful. But the challenge of a city council is that you need to make your decisions based on all of the potential users. And that, I think, is really important. That means that people who would be safe may not be able to drive everywhere that they want to. But that this map does improve connectivity through our community. It would let riders see some of the parks that we've talked about in past conversations. To go by Legion, that's where riders can connect to essentially activities that are aged for them, softball, horseshoes, things like that. And it would pass by many but not all of our businesses. I feel that that is a fair and balanced proposal. I think that nobody gets everything they want, but everybody gets something. If these are my choices, this is what I would choose. But I'm not in your seat, because if I was, I would risk thinking bigger than this issue in front of us. I would be thinking about, why are we even having this conversation? Why are we, a rural community in southwest Wisconsin, arguing with our neighbors about the safety of these vehicles? Because that is not our job. Isaac, you said that just the voice of the club isn't loud enough when you engage with the manufacturers, Tavern League, groups like that. But what about the city? We are a hub in southwest Wisconsin. We all recognize that. We are at a crossroads of a lot of these trails. This is a region that there will be tremendous growth in this industry. Absolutely. And I would say that the industries that produce these vehicles are licking their chops at the potential growth that they see here. I think that we as a community have a lot more leverage in this matter than we are currently recognizing. What about saying no, none at all, and at the same time make an offer? Oh, geez. I'm more nervous than I thought. I chatted with some of you at a council meeting at the end of last December. Isaac, we talked about my roots in Minnesota. I looked at Polaris. Last year, their revenue was $6 billion. $6 billion. Their profit, $1.5 billion. Profit. I'd like to know how many of our small businesses owners here pull in 25% profit and 12 to 15% growth per year. That's immense. Barb suggested in this matter we should call our representatives. Isaac, I asked you about club advocacy, and you say again that the voice of the club, it's a small group, you're passionate and engaged, but it's not loud enough. We all agree that the safety training for these vehicles does not address driving on pavement, and it needs to be updated. But multi-billion-dollar companies and maybe the Tavern League aren't taking on the responsibility that should come hand in hand with that level of profit and power. You want to lead as a community? Say no. While every other community is rolling over, say no. Say no because you care about the safety of our riders and community members. Say no because of justice and fairness. But then don't just say no. Look at yourselves and realize the power and leverage you have as a collective voice. As a community, say no, and at the same time say that we as a community will not allow ATV UTVs until the safety training that is appropriate is available for the users. What about saying no and at the same time make an offer? What about a training center? Think of the lot at the old Blaine store, the Kmart, and U-Haul. Corporate charity exists. The amount of money that it would take to run something like that could be a drop in a $1.5 billion profit. And it could make a real and positive difference for us as well as other communities in the region. We talked about safety and training. It's important. I think the bravest route and the most powerful would be if you make a motion that stated Platteville would not open its streets until those making billions help us develop the capacity to ensure our drivers of all ages have the knowledge and skills and equipment to safely operate these vehicles on paved streets. I'm not good with words, and I offer up a draft resolution for your consideration. Whereas ATVs, UTVs are not designed for operation on paved streets. Whereas current ATV, UTV safety training does not adequately include guidance for operation of these vehicles on paved surfaces. Whereas the city council and staff must establish policy based on consideration of the entire user community. Whereas ATV, UTV club members recognize the value of safety training for all riders and their responsibility and are advocates for the responsible operation of recreational vehicles. Whereas the responsibility for developing and offering appropriate safety training for riders should fall on the state, similar to other operators' licenses. Whereas the corporations earning billions in annual profits from the production and sale of ATV, UTVs should invest in the safety of the consumers using their vehicles. Therefore, be it resolved that all Platteville city streets are closed to ATV, UTV use until appropriate training is available that includes data and design-based guidelines for the safe operation of these vehicles on paid services. Further, be it resolved that the city should establish a task force that collaborates with area clubs to engage our elected state officials and corporate representatives to promote establishment of an ATV, UTV safety training center in the city of Platteville to provide area riders and provide a leadership model for Southwest Wisconsin. Thank you for your time. Oh, yeah. Here's the resolution. If you care for it, I think it would be the greatest thing you could do.
All right, we have one more person who's asked to speak, information purposes, David Ralph.
Yes, good to see you too.
Hi, my name is David Ralph, 75 North Oak Street, apartment 307. I'm on the Community Safety Safe Routes Committee, and I was the person that introduced the motion to advise the council on the basic, minimum route for the UTVs and ATVs. And like some of the other speakers, I've seen a lot of, or at least a number of the ATV, UTV people on the existing routes, because I walk my dog all over the place. And I was amazed at how, and impressed by how safe they were, really going slow and things like that. And I know there are a lot of statistics, a lot of gray areas on the issue, but I think when it comes down to it, the council either has to delay action until the technology and the way the manufacturers build these machines comes up to where it's going to meet the safety standards on the highway, because otherwise we're simply running the risk of having safety problems for pedestrians, bicyclists, motorcyclists, motorists, and even the ATV, UTV drivers and owners. So I am in favor really of keeping it minimal, but I don't see shutting Platteville down, because when I looked at the trails and things, they've got to get through here somehow. So that would be my recommendation. And then possibly another year goes by, whether the technology of the machines catches up and they meet the safety restrictions. Would be in favor of gradually expanding those routes as long as it's safe for our residents and the people that travel through here. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, those are all the individuals that have asked to speak. And so looking at our ATV, UTV ordinance prepared by our chief of police, do you have anything you'd like to say in addition to what you have written in here, Doug? Any additional information or just some high points you'd like to point out? Or?
No, this includes much of the information that was in the original ATV, UTV ordinance. And I'd like to think that a lot of thought went into specific areas of that, to include that a driver's license is required and that insurance is required. I mean, it was something where we cherry-picked from a lot of other municipalities to try and come up with what we felt was the best fit for the city.
Do you have any questions for the chief?
No, but I'd like to make some comments on some of the comments that were made in the general public there. So, and I'd start with Clay Schaefer's. So Clay stated that there's 976 citations for cars, trucks, and motorcycles. So that was the citations. In 2019, there were actually 5,317 stops that were for speeding, traffic stops, OMVIs, parking citations, etc. So we actually only got 976. But if you take the 29 incidences or contacts with ATV, UTVers, that comes out to less than 0.5% or 0.5% of all stops from ATVs. So I think there's some pretty good self-policing and policing through the Platteville Police Department. One of the things that wasn't brought up before, I'll go with Ken. So last month, Ken wanted a couple examples of some municipalities that were of our size or a little bit bigger. And I'm going to use Reedsburg as one of them, and they have a year-round population of 9,487, and they started with what Platteville did with just a few routes through their town to get to businesses. Now they've expanded to all their streets except for 2, and those 2 have a speed limit of 40 or over. And I say year-round because they have a population of 9,487 year-round, where Platteville, we have a population of 12,000 something 7 months out of the year. And then those other months we're below that. But a couple of the other towns that I've found are in the area or in the state are, again, Ashland, Wisconsin, 7,897 people year-round. They've got 23 streets that are open to ATV and UTV uses, and they have access to 7 of their parks. Merrill, Wisconsin, 9,161 people year-round. They have 29 streets open. And then I'll take Superior, Wisconsin, which is home to UW Superior. They've got a population of 26,194 people as of last year. Now they've got 32 streets that are open year-round. They've got 1 trail, which I'm not sure what the difference is, that's open year-round. And then in the winter months, they actually add 7 additional streets for the winter months and 9 additional trails in the winter months to their existing routes. So there become some of the examples that you're asking for. I'm going to go back to a couple of the surveys that were done from the city when this was originally looked at in 2018. So on the map that we have here, including the base map, the blue map, the yellow map, that could be a proposal, one of the questions reads, if you support some of the routes but not all of the proposed routes, which ones would you specifically be in support of? On those, I went through here, the people that answered the questions, not one of those streets had less than 75% of the people that answered that were in favor. So 75% or more of the people were in favor of those proposed routes. And then I'll go back to the door-to-door survey that was done by the club, the people that live on Pitt Street, Sylvia Street, and Ridge Avenue. And that was done on 3 different dates to try getting as many people as we could. There's 67 single-family residents on those 3 streets. Of them, 67 homes we were able to contact people from 67 homes of age, people of 18 or over, which would be 76%. Of those, 76% of that percentage were in favor or fine with the routes being on the streets that they actually live on. So, and then the other thing is, the state has given this option to the communities and municipalities for 4 years now, to start in 2016. I've spoken with the DOT, the DNR, just like Amy has, and in those 4 years, there has been 1 recorded incident within a city or municipality that's got a lower speed limit of an accident, an incident involving a pedestrian, another vehicle, or a fatality. The numbers that you're seeing of the 22 fatalities and wrecks are all in an area that have a speed limit of 55 or over, not within a town or within a city. And then last bit I'll say here is, on the current route that includes Broadway Street, Main Street, South Water Street, there's 138 single-family or duplex properties on those existing routes. There's 4 large multifamily residential properties on those routes, and there's 24 commercial buildings that have residences above them. As of today, I'm unaware of any people that live on those routes that have filed a complaint or stated something negative against having the routes on those streets. So, and I know we keep talking about neighborhoods, but in our neighborhood areas, but these people, they consider where they live their neighborhoods as well. And Barb is not here to defend herself, but I'll put state that she did stated. She lives on Preston Drive, but her back of her house or yard is actually on Main Street, which is one of the routes. Barb herself has stated that the noise has not been a problem, and then in most cases, or some cases, the ATV, UTVs have actually slowed down the traffic on her back street, which is Main Street.
All right, as has been mentioned, and I'm sure that all of you are aware, in the packet, we actually have 3 maps. One is called the base map. One is proposed alternates, and the last is titled, for lack of better, safe routes. So that if we are talking about a map, if you're making a reference to a map, please let the rest of the council members know which map you're talking about. So the base map, discussed that particular route in depth quite a bit at the last meeting. So I think most of us are familiar with that. I think most of the public may be familiar with that as well. But it does include streets, some streets that have not been included before, and it does give more connectivity through the community. So it could start on Lancaster Street and end up going on Chestnut Street and out that way. It also would include Water Street up to Pitt Street and over as far as Second Street, so that, again, allows people who want to enjoy festivities at Legion Park, especially with our new event center, to have access to the event center. It would not allow them to go past the pool or past on Ridge Avenue. That's the base map. It would also allow riders to go down to the 151 intersection where you have Walgreens and Country Inn, and now the current map that expired would have allowed you to go west out to County D. This map would allow you also to go east as far as Valley Road and take Valley Road over to Mineral and then back up to Broadway. So what we're doing with this map, the feeling was increasing the locations that ATV, UTV riders could access in terms of downtown, because Main Street was included in the last ordinance and is included in a proposed ordinance now. So that would stay the same, but it would also give you access now to Legion Field. It would give you access to something like the restaurants on 151, Culver's, and then you would have to turn on to Valley Road, so you do not go past that location. And it would also give you access to Mountain View Park, because we have been told by different entities that ATV and UTV users often want to make it a weekend, and they will look for a place to camp. So it would be access to Mountain View Park, but that's where it would stop. It would not go any further into a residential area. That's what we call the base map. That's what we have in front of us this evening.
Eileen, could I clarify? With the base map, are we also, that also provides like more connectivity for people outside of town to get into Platteville, right?
Yes, that's
okay.
correct. Yes, okay. And one of the things that we will have to note is that the proposed Lancaster Street starts at Ridge. It doesn't go, I guess it would be west, to the old Lancaster Road. I think most people know where that is. It would be up to the ATV, UTV club to get permission to go, because there's a certain amount of that road that is not in the city limits, and the state would have to approve that. So we cannot give access to Old Lancaster Road.
Okay. So past Ridge, we have no jurisdiction.
I don't, exactly where does our
line is a couple hundred feet north of Ridge Avenue. That was listed under one of the alternatives to allow it to the city limits just north of Ridge Avenue. But the base map was only to Ridge Avenue itself.
Can I ask clarification? I thought that was kind of I'm hearing like a chicken and egg situation. I thought they needed us to approve that so that they could request from the state access. So I think that if we intend for them to get it, we have to approve it first, even though.
So that's not on the base map, so
Okay.
that would have to be added.
Okay.
If the council chooses the base map, you would have to add that to it.
Okay.
And she noted that the blue section, or the blue portion of the map, was approved by the safe routes in town here, including Councilperson Arntz. And at the Park and Recreations meeting, they made no comments either way, or yes or no, or no recommendations either way. So.
I have a question for Howard. What's the maximum speed for these vehicles here in Platteville? 35 miles an hour at the most? That's allowed? You or the chief? What's the maximum speed that's allowable?
Depending on the location then.
Depending on location.
Right now, it would be 35 miles an hour or less.
Okay, 35.
And
But some of this,
all of the streets right now that are proposed in the base map are signed, I believe, 30 miles an hour or less.
Yes. It's just when you get north of Ridge Avenue that the speed limit changes
40. Remember
to
that's
40 miles per hour north of Ridge Avenue to the city limits, and then beyond Old Lancaster Road, beyond us, beyond the city, then it changes to 55 on State Highway 81. But the only routes that are higher speed would be Lancaster Street near the north end, and then Business 151 has the 30 mile an hour speed limits. All the other streets listed on this map are 25, as I understand it.
okay.
Okay. Does anybody else have any questions?
I wondered if there was spoken opposition to the Oak Street. Have I missed any discussion on that? And
Did not have a lot of discussion on that, Robin. That request came in, I think after just before our second meeting probably, and I don't know that council members spent a lot of time talking about that, but there was a request to, when you're on Main Street now, or the previous ordinance allowed turning on north onto Third Street, so you could park in the parking lot. And a business on, well, I think it was, is it the VFW? What is on that?
On the wrong side, though.
They did ask if Oak Street could also be included, so if you were on Main Street, you would turn north and you could drive up to the parking lot behind their building, that there would be a desire to have that done. So there wasn't a lot of
Access to
discussion.
the Main Street, or the Oak Street parking lot as well from.
Yes, you could use then the Third Street parking lot as well as the Oak Street parking lot. But you could not exit onto Furnace Street. You would have to turn around and go back to Main Street to get back on the route. So I don't know if anybody else has anything else they'd like to say. I will say, just to start the conversation, as I've said before, I do believe in having ATV, UTV routes through the community. And I am fine with the base map. I certainly, looking at the fact that the Safe Routes Committee did vote for extending it on Sylvia and Ridge out to Lancaster, I would be open to that suggestion. I don't know if there's support for that. But as far as in the residential areas, at this point, I'm not, even though initially I said that yes, I would open up the entire city, I've had a number of people who have asked me to reconsider that. And just like we're listening to the ATV, UTV enthusiasts tonight, we're listening to other people who say we don't really want that. So I think that not having it in all the residential streets is a prudent decision at this point. That may come at some point, but I'm not ready to okay that this evening. That's my personal view.
Speak, please. I have a problem. Our Legion Field will be opening an activity center that will hold 300 people. This club could, in all right, should have rent that activity center. That's 300 people.
And
I live right next door. Where are my Dairy Days parkers gonna park there if they happen to be driving an ATV? I mean, for 3 to 4 blocks down Seymour Street, Case Street, Mountain View Park Street, 2nd Street, up and down every single street around there is filled with people for Dairy Days. Now we just turn that over now to our brand new activity center. Where are these people going to park? if you can't be on a side street, where are they gonna park to take advantage of this brand-new, very expensive building, should they choose to have a regional activity at a beautiful facility, which to me would be an ideal location to have a activity with everything that Legion Field has to offer. So, I mean, I'm just proposing, where economically are we going to put the people that are most interested in coming to town, taking advantage of what we have, and having to take advantage of what we have also includes parking. Now, I plan every year for my Dairy Days parking, for my 4th of July parking. I move my cars out of the way because I know I'm going to be parked in, which is fine with me. I even put a sign, park in my driveway. I don't mind, and I'm already prepared for the activity center to bring in parking. Because there'll be festivals, additional festivals, there'll be parties, there'll be tournaments. We're spending about $2 million on a building that one club in town can't use. I mean, I just find this, for at least thinking in terms of what this town has to offer, that little corner has a lot to offer. So if we're going to do one change, I would like to include the change that brings at least Ridge Avenue and 2nd Street and Sylvia Street into the picture, to allow the folks to go through town, maybe park off in some farmer field and be able to walk over to take advantage of that new building, which I can easily see them wanting to meet there because it'll be comfortable for their families. And so anyway, that's my comment about off-street parking or off-route parking.
And I understand what you're saying, Barb. I was the one who proposed that we open Pitt Street to 2nd Street for that reason, that people could get to the new event center. I really think that's important. There did not seem to be support at our last meeting for opening up Sylvia because of the pool and opening up Ridge. I'm not sure exactly why that one, maybe because it's heavily traveled. I don't recall the exact reason why there didn't seem to be support for that. But at this point, I would have to say there's not support for opening up a lot of the residential streets. If I hear a change tonight and somebody wants to propose that and there's support for that, you know, I can see that happening. And as far as parking, I would say, yeah, well, I've parked in quite a distance away and had to walk to get to the park. So unfortunately, that's probably what would happen.
I will say that unfortunately I'm not going to be here, but I will diligently watch the use of that activity center and how the parking situation looks like. I don't know, Howard, how many slots are going to be in that new parking lot? I don't know, 100? No, maybe less.
As I recall, I don't have the exact
Okay.
number off the top of my head, but when we just redid the parking lot this last year, there was over 100
Okay.
marked stalls in there. But when Dairy Days occurs, that's used for tents and rides and other things. But if you're talking about other activities, those 100+ spaces can certainly be used by people who are at the Legion Park Event Center.
Right, anyone else have any comments about the ordinance or the maps?
I also support the, along with Eileen, the base map with the extension for the connectivity on Lancaster Street.
On the north side?
Yes.
Okay, I'll
yes.
just, Old Lancaster Road, I'm gonna call it for lack of a better term. Other comments from the council?
Are you supporting Ridge Avenue, Jason?
I'm supporting the base map
The base map.
with the connectivity on Lancaster Road.
And Ridge Avenue. No Ridge Avenue?
That's not on the base map.
I am supporting the base map.
Other comments about the base map, about the, alternate map, or the safe routes map?
The safe route map, the one that was voted on December 4th by the committee,
Yes.
is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
And that did include Ridge Avenue and Sylvia Street.
The second one on this?
The safe routes map, which was voted on December 4th. But the base map is what we're discussing right now. Again, when we're ready to make a motion, I would ask that you note the map that you are approving. And the ordinance is also in our packet, and so I assume that all of you have had a chance to read that. Do you have any questions on the ordinance? Because that will really govern where ATVs and UTVs are permitted to go, because the language is right in that ordinance. It's plainly, right now, does the base map.
I have a question on, let's see, 3817 parentheses 5B. Interpretation. It says.
Which one are you?
It's on 38.17 parentheses 5.
Okay.
There's A and B, so looking at B on the next page, it says ATVs and UTVs are not allowed to park in or along roadways, alleyways, or parking lots within the city of Platteville between the hours of 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. Does that mean that they can park along residential streets which are not designated?
That was language.
Is any,
I'm sorry.
so they're not allowed to park along the roadway?
That was language that was left over from the previous ordinance. In my eyes, if they're parked on a city street, I mean, in a legal parking space for what would be legal for otherwise, for a motor vehicle.
Ken, are you asking, like, if it's not an approved route, can they park on it? Or if it's an approved route?
If it's not approved, can they park along it?
I would say no. Doug,
It's not an approved route.
yeah.
It's not approved, okay. Then the other thing was, I was wondering about the timing, because it says parking between the hours 11 and 6. So in other words, if we approve up to 10 o'clock at night, what's happening to the other hour between 10 and 11?
That was, again, a holdover from the previous ordinance. We didn't really address.
In other words, it seems to me that if you're gonna have night traffic and you can park until 11, what are you gonna do as far as that 1 hour?
And that's something that is within your purview to change.
Maybe it's just a typo.
It's a
I was
holdover
also
from-
questioning that, Ken, and I think changing it to 10 PM makes more sense, because that is what we are saying. You can be year-round, 6 AM to 10 PM. And I think you would want to have your vehicle home or somewhere.
Yeah, the only thing I could think of just looking at that as one reason why there may be that 1 hour difference is if you think about it, we're saying that from 10 p.m. to 6 a.m. it's closed. So essentially at 10 p.m. you can no longer be on a route. Well, let's say somebody is traveling here and they're in the parking lot. Well, they theoretically could not be on the route. At 10 o'clock they're done. They may be then going to the parking lot and then loading up. So that's one thought process there, is you're giving them essentially an hour. If they were to stay exactly till 10, you're giving them an hour to go to the parking lot, get everything loaded up and get out of there. But I completely understand the other, if you want to make it, that's perfectly feasible if you want to keep it consistent, have it that way. That's the only thing I can think of for the top of my head is you're giving it an hour.
Then going down to 3817, parentheses 7, looking at D, this is one of the examples I think of we need improvement as far as technology. And this is, it says, must have operational brake lights. Well, on some of these vehicles, they only need one brake light, and I believe they should have two. And also I'm concerned about, and I've mentioned this before, that they should have directional lights as well. And that's a lack of safety as far as a feature. And so I think this, as mentioned here, there needs to be improvement as far as the safety features and other conditions as far as ATVs and UTVs. So I think D is short on information that is needed. And the next one I have is on GHI. It says that the noise from a vehicle should be no more than 96 decibels. And I looked up in 33.23, and I'm curious as to how this is going to be measured. And also in reading the booklet put out by DNR, 96 decibels is mentioned in there. So this is something that's given as a noise limit for being out on a trail. This is something to me that's not useful in the city. I think this is too high as far as a noise limit within the city. So I think that needs to be looked at. Example of that, last summer, I was at Quick Trip by the fire plug next to Water Street, and a UTV was leaving. UTV left with a roar, excessive noise, poor performance as far as the driver was concerned. So my question is, how are we going to regulate where we have situations where excessive noise is being given or put out in the city? What is the city of Platteville, what are the police going to have in the way of means of monitoring the noise from vehicles that are ATVs, UTVs? So that to me hasn't been looked at. At least I haven't heard of it.
Is there a standard?
I think those are the main things. So there's a number of things I think as far as safety that should be looked at, especially directional lights. You know, I said previous time, that we had those back really in the 50s, and now we come along with ATVs, UTVs that don't have them. And as I pointed out before, I'm not going to be looking for somebody to stick their arm out in the nighttime or wet weather, and I should be looking for it. I mean, I don't want to be looking out for the ATV, UTV as far as they're not doing their part as far as safety. Thank you.
Doug, is there a standard ordinance in terms of like vehicle decibel level in general, or no?
Not for motor vehicles.
Okay.
I mean, not to my knowledge for decibel level.
Okay.
So we have some ordinances relative to what I will call noise, but not specifically for vehicles?
There is unnecessary display of power that a lot of times will capture if somebody was burning rubber. I mean, or driving in an unsafe manner as a result of engaging in that behavior. But I mean, not a decibel level per se.
This is the situation that I observed, and so what does a person do?
And a lot of times it goes hand in hand with the driving behavior that's resulting in that loud noise.
Well, that's true. The driver is driving like a 12-year-old person.
then that's something that we could address.
All right. Are there other comments or questions about any of the maps or the ordinance?
I have a question as far as the number of ATVs and UTV vehicles housed in the city of Platteville. Any idea?
Tried to get that information, and the DNR does not track registrations by municipality or by zip code.
I have, I believe I brought up about Monroe. Monroe has the item written in their ordinance that somebody could go to the designated route if they use the shortest route from their home or the place of housing their vehicle. And I'd certainly be in favor of that.
And
Now, and this
address
booklet
that.
says you can't do that. But I think this booklet it is written based on the idea that you can't take an ATV, UTV from some area that's a long distance away in a city and get to the route.
The warden that was here, Marty Stone, when we spoke with him, when the warden was here from the DNR, we specifically asked him that, and you can't do that. So even with today's rules of having them in town, you can't do that. So Monroe's doing it, but they're not doing it.
But I think it's something which is outdated.
What's that?
I think it's something that's outdated.
I'd probably agree with you on that part, but I'm just telling you what you can do and you can't do. So, but we specifically asked them that, and they're doing something they shouldn't be doing, and I would not be in favor of even proposing that, so.
And as I pointed out, there are other things outdated in this publication, which is, some of these have been put into this ordinance.
Any other comments or questions? Otherwise, just go ahead.
I guess my only one would be like the whole 10 o'clock versus 11 o'clock for the parking space. Like, do we want to change that, or do we want to leave it as is?
I personally would like to make it 10 o'clock, then I think there's
Just have
no
it-
question
sure.
about what time it ends. And your vehicle should probably be on your own property at 10 p.m. would be my,
I agree with that.
Okay.
okay.
I'd like to comment. I
Sure,
guess.
go ahead.
Give my own
Yep.
summation for tonight, I guess. Yeah, I do feel pretty passionate, like many in the crowd, about this topic, and I really even don't know where I sit. When we keep talking, I threw out all city streets. I've, said I support having it. Evan's drafted resolution is an actual temptation for me. It's a topic that needs attention. And I would, not to get anyone too scared, I do think that it makes sense at this time to go forward with supporting the routes and not opening up all of the streets, just given multiple reasons. But I do want to put the onus back on the club that you have organized to do things for your hobby. And right now you're putting a lot of energy into trails. But if you can use that organization with the assistance of city government and people reaching out to their representatives to take action on some of these things that Evan's laid out for us that we could do as a community, I think it's one of those places where we don't have to fight against each other. We can move forward together with all of our passions to get some of these issues addressed. So I would say my number one concern is this OMVIs not being on your licenses, and I don't think the city of Platteville can address that alone by not approving routes, but we do need to address it. And then again, with those safety standards, increasing actual experience on the road safety being addressed instead of pretending that it's not an issue at all by the industry. So I just think it's really important that we're all putting that on the record, that we have those concerns. I wish that we could strong arm the industry by standing as a city and not doing it, but I don't think that it is gonna do us favors right now. I don't think it's gonna work. So I just hope that we can continue to use our passions and energies to address those issues and not let them drop. So.
And I agree, Robin, and I think who knows, maybe with other communities, they may feel the same way we feel, and maybe enlist the power of other communities besides
Mm-hmm.
to talk at least to the DNR and the DOT.
I guess I'll add to that, to the club. The momentum's in your favor at this moment as far as approving routes and city government or what you have, but it could shift, right? I mean, we know our city council positions they're up for grabs. And so I think that's just, more incentive for us to continue to work to get what is in everyone's favor done and not fight against each other. But I just don't want you to let up the gas when it comes to lobbying. Please work against, or how do I want to say, use what you can to get these changes made, and not let it, don't let it drop. I guess you're responsible, like you said, self-policing for the fact that this is a hobby that includes drinking frequently. So, okay.
And I agree with Robin, and I believe Barb said too at the last meeting that we were talking about this, is that the main concerns that continue to be brought up, unfortunately, cannot be addressed by the city council. As much as we would maybe want to change some of that stuff, that has to come from a state level. It has to come, but again, I think if we can all work together, if we can start to advocate and focus on those issues to make what we're doing better, I think I would definitely be for that.
All right, for the benefit of everyone here, the information that we have in front of us, I will just read again the routes that are on the base map, which is what I hear most people talk about, right? Probably something that would be acceptable. So the hours of operation on the routes would be 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. The routes would be open year-round. There would be fines for OMVI, but different than the state has, because if we try to change that part, then we end up having to address 28 other.
They're the same as what the state has, but different for motor vehicle penalties.
Which is what we would like to have changed.
Yeah.
But at this point, it's not changed. So these are the streets that would be open. Main Street from the west city limit, which basically means County B coming in, to Broadway, so you can go down Main Street and up Broadway. That's what we had in the last ordinance. 3rd Street, that also was in the last ordinance, so you can turn from Main Street onto 3rd Street. You have to stop at Furnace. You cannot go on Furnace. You have to turn around and go back. That allows you use of the parking lot on. In addition would be Business Highway 151 from the west city limit to the intersection with Valley Road. So again, if you're going down on Water Street, you stop at the stoplight, you turn left, you can go as far as Valley Road. Valley Road, then you would end up at East Mineral Street. From East Mineral Street, you can go up to Broadway Street, which again, Broadway Street was on the original ordinance. And then Madison Street, the entrance to Mountain View Park, so you could turn to go into Mountain View Park, but you can't continue outside or in any residential area there. You cannot continue on Madison Street, only to the entrance of Mountain View Park. Water Street, if you go down to the end of Main, you would be able to go left onto Water Street, to Pitt Street, and then left on that to as far as 2nd Street again. So that's the event center access that would be allowed. And then Lancaster Street, and again, this is what the ordinance says, we would have to add the alternate, but this is Lancaster Street from Ridge Avenue to Adams Street, which is the Big Bend. You take Adams Street, then you're on Chestnut Street, and then you can go to the south city limits, so that basically you can go out County D. The alternate route would be Lancaster State Trunk Highway 81 north from Ridge Avenue to the north city limits, contingent on the DOT opening State Trunk Highway 81 to ATV, UTV traffic to allow that connectivity with the old Lancaster Road in the township. So again, that can only be opened if the state agrees. And the city will not be asking for that, as I understand it. We would expect the ATV.
Club would ask for it, but Howard would actually have to sign a piece of paper stating that the route in town is open.
Okay, so we can put that in as an alternate route that would only be accessed if the state agreed. And again, changing the ordinance so that the parking would not be allowed between the hours of 11 p.m. and 6 a.m. It would be 10 p.m. and 6 a.m., and that's B on 38.17. That's what I understand that we've discussed. That's frankly what I would support. Anybody else have any questions on that or anything else to add? If not, then
But yeah, I am in support of Oak Street.
you are in Port of Oak Street? Does anyone object to adding Oak Street to the list?
I would not be an objection to that.
You would not object to that. Ken?
What portion?
You would be on Main Street, you would turn north on Oak Street and stop at Furnace.
Okay.
Barb, did you say you would be acceptable to that, or?
Yes.
Okay, so,
I still have one request, but it's not on this, so that's fine.
okay, so Oak Street would also be included. I don't think that's in the list, so think that it maybe is an alternate. Yeah, Oak Street from Main Street to Furnace Street was an alternate. So there are two alternates routes. So we would need a motion.
I'll make a motion. I'd make a motion to adopt provisions of the previous City of Platteville ordinance governing the ATV, UTV operation in the City of Platteville with the following changes. First one would be the parking change or no parking from 10 p.m. till 6 a.m. with the opening of the following streets. The streets that are included in the red base map, the blue map, which is approved by the Safe Routes, the yellow, which would be the Highway 81 from Ridge Avenue to the north city limits, and the lavender. Traffic and open the routes from the hours of 6 a.m. to 10 p.m. daily, year-round.
Just include Ridge.
Yes, that would be the blue. I actually have a handout that puts every street on there.
So I second that one.
All right, so we have a motion and a second to include Ridge Avenue, Highway 81 from Ridge Avenue to the city limits. So that's actually the alternate.
It'd be the red base map,
It would be
the
all.
blue, the yellow, and the lavender.
Okay,
Which is alternate 2.
so you're looking at the alternate map?
Yes.
Isaac?
But he's including Ridge Avenue.
If you're looking at the alternate map, which is
Yes,
in
I
the packet
am,
here,
but
it'd be the red base, it'd be the blue line that's on there, it'd be the lavender line, and then it'd also be the yellow line. So basically, all the lines that are on there would be included.
That's what I second. So.
Yep.
any
So
more
it's basically the
conversation would
alternate
be-
map as opposed to the base map.
Any more conversation would be based on the motion.
I said I did not favor Ridge Avenue. I wanted the base map.
All right, we have a motion and a second. Any other comments? Otherwise, I'm going to ask for a vote on the motion, and basically, again, just so we're clear, Isaac, it's the alternate map.
Lavender, the alternate map.
The red,
But that's the
Motion is
middle.
only on the map,
and, yep, yellow and the lavender, yep.
but also the resolution, you've included part of the resolution. Correct?
The resolution.
Yes.
Well, the changes that we had, the 6 a.m. to 10 p.m., the year-round, the change in the parking from 10 p.m., or no parking, excuse me, after 10 p.m. until 6 a.m., correct?
All right, so we have a motion and a second, and we're going to vote.
Nichols.
No.
Stockhausen.
Yes.
Arts.
No.
Killian.
No,
Klein.
No.
Shanley.
Yes.
Motion does not carry.
Right. So we have had extensive discussion also on the base map. Does anyone care to make another motion?
I'd like to have this come back. I mean, I think this is a good point, that we need to spend some time as far as improving the resolution as far as what the ordinance is saying, because we're not covering enough on safety. And I've just given a few simple things that are not being covered.
I understand that, Ken. I don't think that we are going to be able to change that in a, can I say timely fashion? But I do think that the city council appears to be interested in trying to pursue some kind of conversation with the legislature, the DOT, the DNR, to get some of these changes made. I don't think that that's likely to happen.
Well, what about if people don't put on directional lights? You say that they can't drive at night on streets, and that only those people that have directional lights can drive at night.
I'm not opposed to that, actually, I'll let you say, but.
Oh, I was going to say that might be a little tedious.
Well, it is. I know that it's not gonna be likely that people will come into our community with that on their machines done. So we're gonna have law enforcement having to give warnings to every visitor to our community.
Well,
But the hope would be our locals to at least get it done.
we put it in the ordinance that they have to complete it by a certain time. Now, there's some of these safety things could be, I think, done at the local level. We don't have to wait for the state of Wisconsin or DNR to tell us to do them, or the company.
But I think what you're asking, Ken, is for the owners of these vehicles to retrofit the vehicle. Is that what you're asking for then?
Asking for what?
Asking them to retrofit their vehicle because they're
Yes,
not made that way.
and we'll give them time,
As in part of an ordinance?
yes.
That's one idea. I think it's going to be a much longer involved process.
Yeah.
But
So is there a motion on the table?
there is not a motion on the table. Is anyone interested in making a motion?
I move to approve the base map with the addition of the connectivity on Lancaster Road and also Oak Street. And also the change, any changes within the ordinance. Yeah, yeah.
Okay, for parking as well as being allowed to be on. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second it.
All right, we have a motion and a second for the base map with the change from 11 o'clock until 10 PM for parking with the addition of Oak Street and Lancaster Street access to Trunk Highway 81. Any other comments or questions on that?
Or a question, then it goes up to 81, our red line, and then you have to try to get the state to approve.
The state would have to approve the access when it extends past our city limits. All right. Any other comments? We'll vote.
Nichols,
Yes.
Stockhausen,
Yes.
Arts,
Yes.
Killian,
Yes,
Klein,
Yes.
Shanley. Motion carries.
All right, thank you, everyone, for your comments, your persistence. Thank you, council members, for your persistence. It's been a while, but I think we finally at least resolved some of the issues, not all of them this evening. And we are going to go on to the next thing on our agenda, which is Resolution 2001, updating the fee schedule.
All right, this will be me. There's only been one change since the last time I presented this to you. So this is our annual staff review of the fees charged by the city of Platteville for various license permits, inspections, programming, etc. And the following changes that I read during information discussion, they all remain. The only additional change would be to page 8 among the library fees, is the library has removed room rental fees and changed just the community room rental from $20 to $10. And staff recommends approval of the attached resolution amending the City of Platteville fee schedule for 2020. Do you have any questions?
Yes, the rental fee is for non-library items? Is that what you're saying? The library for the community room. They're just going to charge a fee for non-library groups.
I guess I'm not sure who they're charging the fee to. It's just for the community room itself. It's my understanding that they used to have a number of room rental fees, at the library, and they're now only applying that to the community room rental, and it's going from $20 to $10. I'm not sure exactly who they're charging that to. I don't know if they have exceptions for certain groups. That would be maybe a question for Jesse.
Well, I think it's, since I brought it up, I think it's appropriate to just not change it from group to group, but have a stable fee. Because the library is a library for a reason, and that's bringing people in the door. And
Along the lines of if someone can make business money from what it is that customers in to meet with me, that there's some sort of enterprise or dollars basically covers cleaning fee. So they just felt it was increasing use and less limiting. So I think we're going the right direction with the change in fees. I think the fees maybe were kind of set just, you know, it was their first go at it when the library was built, and not wanting to, not sure what the demand would be, but that they have room for increasing the demand. So reduce.
I'd also just like to point out, we did receive some guidance from our city attorney on this subject. The fees that relate to the library are actually set by the library board, not by the council. But they are included with all the other fees for the city, just for ease of access for city residents when they're looking up fees for the city.
Any other questions or comments?
I have a question on the park shelter reservation. So how often are we able to come back and look at these and adjust these fees? And my concern is if after, say, a year, with this being up and running, and we're finding out that these fees aren't covering the everyday electricity, heat bills, water, sewer, maintenance. Obviously, you know, we got $1 million some building there. You should be putting some reserves away after every event for when you start to have repairs, another furnace, else you're gonna be going right back and asking for more donations. The fees that I see here, you know, based on, you know, what I know for events and stuff, and I've seen other events, aren't gonna cover it, you know, so after, you know, I'm trying to figure out after what amount of time are we able to adjust these to make sure that it's at least paying for itself. I'm not saying it needs to make money, but that it's at least paying for itself and setting some reserves aside for, you know, a furnace in 10 years, a water heater in 10 years, you know, just anything. The reservation, or excuse me, the deposits, you know, if you have a damage or something, the deposit's not gonna cover that, you know, so I'm just kind of, that's my question is when can we come back and look at these if needed? Not saying we have to, but. So.
I mean, you can review the fees multiple times a year. I mean, whatever you want, you can. Historically, we've done it every year.
Okay.
And I would say, you know, when looking at this, where that base fee came in, I looked at my primary reference point was the Nor Gallery, just being that was the most similar size to our facility. So that was kind of where we were basing it on. I don't disagree, though. I mean, I think this is, I don't want to say it's trial and error. We have educated guesses about how much revenue we're going to bring in and how much expenses we're going to incur. And I agree with you that we, you know, if we hope to be in excess of that on an annual basis to set money aside so that we could cover, you know, some of those major things down the line in the future that we know eventually happen with any facility. So.
And I would understand that, you know, we would have to have at least a full year and even see what we're looking at. So, you know, just after that year, even a year and a half, because we're kind of, you know, it's going to be exciting. It's going to be the new thing. So you're going to have a lot of leases and it's going to slow down like everything else. But so that was just my question to see how often we could, if needed.
And just so you know, as a whole, the fees come before the council yearly. I bring them before you. So if you want to see this again, it'll be before you about December timeframe. But yeah, like Luke said, if you have intermittent questions, feel free to ask.
I have a couple of questions. It appears that a word was just left hanging on the building inspection, general notes number 6. At the end of that line, it says the building, but it doesn't really continue, so I'm not sure that maybe that was just supposed to be erased, but. And then on the next page, it was under the fire department, it says all buildings owned by a blank. So just just something to look at, that maybe it just needed to be erased, or maybe it really, that was under the fire inspection.
I'm assuming the line and the graph didn't get pulled down
That's
far
what
enough.
I'm thinking probably happened too.
Thank
So
you.
I don't think it changes the fees at all. It's pretty clear what the fees are for, but, yeah, that was the only question that I had. Anybody else have any questions or comments? Otherwise, this is an action item. We would need a motion to approve the 2001 fee schedule.
Move to approve with the changes as given.
Second.
Motion and a second. Any other comments or questions? We'll vote.
Nichols?
Yes.
Stockhausen?
Yes.
Arts?
Yes.
Killian?
Yes.
Klein?
Yes.
Shanley?
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, that concludes our action items, information and discussion. Mr. Eng is glad that he came for this meeting because we are now going to talk about the land donation for Lot 21 of Oak Haven subdivision. Joe?
Yes, back in 2018, Bob Cody, developer of the Oak Haven subdivision, made a request, basically have the city accept a donation of Lot 21 in the Oak Haven subdivision. He had originally intended to develop that lot, but it would require a large amount of fill and regrading, and he started to do that, and I think he just kind of got tired of dealing with the maintenance of the lot, and we received some complaints from the neighborhood regarding how it was maintained, weeds and dead trees and so forth. So he's basically, I think he was trying to get out of the development business in Platteville. He's got another development in La Crosse that he's focusing on, so he was just trying to get rid of the lots he had left, and this would have taken more time than he wanted to put into it. So long story short, he did donate that to the city. The city was reluctant initially to take on that property. We didn't really have a use for that, but in the end we did accept it with the understanding that it was just going to be green space. We didn't really have a set need for that property. So it is ours. So it's just kind of as is a green space property. Fast forward to just recently, I've been having some conversations with the school district, school board member, as well as administration regarding their efforts to make some improvements to their building trades, construction, so forth programs, and looking at getting that up and running couple of years. So as part of that, eventually they'll get to the point where their students could help build a home as part of the trade instruction. So obviously to do that, they would need some land, a lot to build that on. So that's kind of down the road a little bit, but it'd be helpful to have that lot so they know as they pursue conversations with the university, Southwest Tech, contractors, et cetera, that is a possibility for them to work on. So they've approached us to see, since we have that lot, it is vacant, we don't have a set use for it, if we would be interested in partnering with them to basically provide that lot and make it available for the construction of a home through that program with the high school. So basically this is a start of the conversation to see if there's some interest in that. As you mentioned, Mr. Ing is here, the high school principal, can give you more details on the program, how it's going to work, what they've got in mind for time frame, et cetera. But I look at it as, to me, it's definitely a win-win kind of situation. As I mentioned, we don't really have a use for the land set aside. If they can make use of it, it would help their academic program. It would help theoretically their enrollment if they got a family in there. It would help both of our tax base situations with the new home on there. We just did a housing study that talked about need for different types of housing. So I see a lot of advantages to this idea. So if you have any questions, I'm sure he could try to answer those questions.
I just have a comment or two. I would like to see an innovative project. It's a steep lot, and lots of things could be done on that lot. And one thing that I see important is to make it so that you have stair lifts so you can easily go up and down stairs, either walking or with a stair lift. Very helpful. And people may encounter times in their life when they have broken bones and so forth, and they can't walk very well, and stair lifts are wonderful. I've had one in our apartment, one apartment for about 25 years. And another place I put them for about 4 years. There are other things as well, such as better securing of the structure against tornado damage. And so there are lots of things can be done. So I don't like to see simply the cheapest project, but a project that's innovative. Thank you.
Wish to speak at all, Mr. Eng? This is only on information and discussion tonight. We will not be taking action, but if you have any comments you'd like to make, but you don't have to, it's entirely up to you.
Here's the only question I would have.
You'd have to come to the microphone if you're going to do it.
Only question I would have would be a potential time frame. I mean, I know you can't set it in stone, but
Could you give me your name, please, and your address?
My name is Tim Eng. I'm the high school principal. My address is 155 Maple Drive. We're in the process of getting courses approved. It's going to be a sequential, on a sequential basis of 4 courses, with the end project being a year-round full home build. It's really, there's a couple different options of how we want to do it. Either we build a spec home on our own, or we partner up with someone who wants to build a home and they provide the plans that they want to do, and we build the home in partnership with them or area builders. It would also be in collaboration with our area trades people, so our HVAC or electricians or plumbers. Part of that is through kind of the coalition that has been started, or that conversation where all of our trades businesses in the area are really looking for young workers. So this would provide an opportunity for us to diversify what we are putting out in the community and opening the eyes of a lot of our students who are thinking of doing something other than the 4-year track. So this is gonna hopefully provide a lot of different needs and promote a building and trades employees for our community. The other part is we are in the infant stage of this. Right now we polled our students. We have 35 students currently interested in this program. That's a very large number. Actually, the class will probably take on 12 to 15 students per year. And it'll be a 2.5-hour course a day on site. So it's going to be something new for us. It's going to be a big project. I'm not sure how long a full build will take. We want to plan for a year, as the foundation would be poured over the summer, and then actual hands-on construction would take place throughout the year from start to finish. That's kind of the plan. Whether that happens or not, I'm not sure. It'd be our first time doing it that way. As we looked at some other districts that do similar projects, some will build the home on the school site and then move the home in pieces. That's not something we're interested in. We don't have that capacity in our back lot, and I don't believe we have the weather protection to do something like that. Other programs do it the way that we want to do it, where they build it on site with their kids. And they do it lots of different ways, supported and funded different ways. Some have councils that oversee it. Some actually hire contractors as district employees to oversee the management of the site, and the kids help here and there. It ranges differently. We're confident in the instructor that we have, who's going to be in charge of this. His name is Jason Sass. He owned a construction business in his past life, and he's excited to do it, and he has lots of contacts, and it seems like area employers are excited to be a part of this project. And I think it'd be a great promoter for our community as well. So this lot that just happens to come up, as it was mentioned, is a lot that requires a lot of improvements before we can build on it. However, in speaking with some people around the community, I think we would be able to gain a lot of donations to improve that site and kind of cut the cost for us. The cost for the district is not something of concern at this point. The donation of the lot would really help us out, however, because this is a startup program. So we're kind of digging ourselves a little bit of a hole to start with the amount of tools and trailers and resources and everything that we would need to purchase to start up. And it wouldn't be for a gain per se. So the donation of land would be huge for our district in starting this program on the right foot. I'm not sure of the timeline. We have some other land that could possibly be used. We have some dual lots in our community where people are considering donating the other half of their lot or having us build on the other half of their lot. And it's closer vicinity to the school and doesn't need improvements. And we could build a smaller home to start with instead of the home, which to kind of match that neighborhood would be a little bit larger than a 1,500 square foot home. So those are things being in consideration, but it would be really nice to have a lot in place as we actually start planning and moving forward. And as we start advertising that we're doing this program, if someone wants to move to Platteville or is looking to build a home, if there is a lot, we can say, here's the lot that we want to build on, it might trigger someone to move forward with us to build a home there.
So when the home is sold, where does that money go to? Does that go back to the school district, or does it get like distributed? How does that work?
It would pay for the cost of the home.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any questions? I want to make a comment. I don't think I have a question, other than this is super exciting for me. This is, my husband helped write curriculum for Southwest Tech Building Construction Management program, so it's something our head's been on for many years. I don't know, I'd wondered about the city's loan program, if I can come up with the right terms, that we're developing that project right now with improving old houses. And if the high schoolers wouldn't be able to get in on some of those projects, except for there's some exposure to old houses in that process, but it would be excited if that, some of that might be able to happen in this, as this program grows. But just a clean new build is fun and has so many opportunities, and this is definitely an area that a lot of kids aren't really looking to go into, but we need them to be looking to go into. So to see their friends excited about it and classes at school, I think is great. And yeah, I have full confidence in Mr. Sass to do an awesome job, and he's got great resources at his disposal. So this is, like said, win-win, win-win, I think. My only question is just, the finer details of if you make some changes to the property and then don't end up building on it, how do we end up with a property that's not given back to us that leaves us in a worse situation than we started? But I think it's worth the gamble for sure to give you all that leverage that you need to get the program going. So I'm excited about it. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it'd be an excellent opportunity for the city to help out the school district. And this was done before I was on the council, but I would not have been in favor of taking a lot, or not taking, but having, or I should say taking a lot off the tax bill, because here we're finding, it is a buildable lot. And if, I take one of the most simpler houses up there, this would be an opportunity to put about another $4,000 to $4,500 back in the tax roll when it's completed. So again, I agree with Robin, it's a win-win for all the parties involved. So, and I would agree with Robin that if we can make a way of helping out the students, not only by giving the lot to them, but also getting some of the money for startup costs, trailers, tools, if we can, find those avenues and helping out that way as well. So.
I do love that it's leveraging both the community support for the school to get something done in the city, because it's not as often fun for people to get behind but that's
hey now.
Well, it just seems more removed
like
from them, so you have some more direct payout when they feel like they're getting behind their kids, or the school just is exciting. There's lots of good stuff going on there, so I think that's great for us all to collaborate. So thanks for bringing us in, or for Joe for suggesting it.
I have a practical item. Lock that trailer with 6 lots. Because my dad lost a trailer once. It was emptied. So just a practical note.
Sure.
Keep in mind. All right, that sounds.
There's a lot of builders sitting at this counter here.
Like like a good project, so.
Get you, sir.
All right, Chapter 23, amendment, electrical permits. Joe?
Yeah, this is a result of some activity that the state has been undertaking the last few years. Department of Safety and Professional Services has made a lot of changes regarding their internal procedures, how they license electricians, how the states are, or how the state is requiring municipalities to do electrical inspections and so forth. So we've been doing this for a while, but they, as part of that process, they reviewed our ordinance, our building code as it is written right now, and there is a provision in there as related to how the language regarding the issuance of commercial electrical permits does not meet DSPS standards, so they're suggesting if we want to continue doing commercial electrical inspections, we have to make some changes to that. So alls I did is I took our exact language now and I took the language they had in the administrative code and adopted it and put it right in there. So this should meet all of the requirements, and basically it is a requirement if we want to continue doing commercial electrical inspections. So other than that, that's why we have to do it and what we're doing. Any questions?
We wouldn't do these permit inspections? Would we have to hire somebody from a private firm?
If we were not doing it, then theoretically the state would be doing it, but the state is grossly understaffed. So the state has contract agencies that do that, but they're short in supply in this part of the state. So the best case would be the contractors would be waiting for days and days to get a permit or an inspection conducted, so it would not be good for the projects. The contractors in this area would be a major delay, but theoretically the state it would be their responsibility. But like I said, they're not really, don't have the capacity to do that. So it would be better for all parties if we could continue to do it, I believe.
Any other questions or comments?
Did I miss, is there a fee collected for that? This is something I feel like I should know, but sorry. Was there?
Yes. It's based on the cost of the project, or new construction is based on square footage of the building.
And
But it's part of the fee schedule that you guys have in front of you.
Does it cover our expense to do it and then some? Is it like somehow kind of subsidizing the fire department?
From our yes, our fees would cover our the inspector's time on projects. I mean, we've never done an exact analysis, but we've set them where we'd be covering our costs. I mean, all the building permits that we collect during a year are more than enough to cover our full building inspection department, so we know it's covering all the costs.
Right, item C, Community Resource Officer.
Spirit of school district city collaboration, we've had some discussions with the school district about the potential for establishing a community resource officer. Those discussions have gone very well, to the extent that the district would be willing to fund a community resource officer through use of their Fund 80 or their community fund. This position is something that I feel has been would address very much a neglected area of our community, i.e. the school-age children. And it would have a whole lot of potential to be expanded down the road. This position, again, is something that we have not had during my tenure, and I think it would be it's very much needed. It would expand beyond just a presence in the schools. It would achieve that goal, but it would also address things for the city to include homeschooled children, potentially interaction at Parks and Rec functions or activities, presence in the library, just a host of things where I think it could really be an exciting position. The way that we see this functioning or operating is that a existing officer who is would like to function in that capacity would go through a selection process and then be chosen to take part in this. Currently, we've got 20 sworn officers when we're at full staff. What I would envision is backfilling the veteran officer that would go to fill a role like this. The city would have the responsibility to train, equip, and provide a squad car or a vehicle for the use of the community resource officer. But again, wages and benefits would be billed back to the school district.
Questions or comments?
I have another comment.
Go ahead.
Oh, you're gonna speak?
No, go for it.
Is there a particular program that an individual goes through that's geared toward this
In terms
function?
of training,
Yes.
yes, there is.
Like okay.
A school resource officer or community resource officer, or there are different names for the position, but there's position-specific training. And we would, the city would be responsible for getting somebody trained up. Usually about a week or 2 weeks of training initially.
You said the officer would be a city employee, but yet part of the package would be billed back to the schools.
Yes.
Projected date would be August of 2020. That
When they would begin in that capacity. We'd hope to identify that chosen officer much sooner than that, because I've been researching it, and the training, some of the stuff starts as early as the end of March or so. So we'd want to definitely have somebody trained up and ready to go well in advance of the August date.
So this is definitely another area of passion for me. I guess this is the night where we cover the Klein household. But I'm really excited that the school is looking to find some other avenues of intervention and interaction. When you use the term neglected population in our community, that kind of hit hard. Like there's areas that we definitely need more help with. So, and I'll call to the community to help interact with our youth more frequently to give positive role models. But I just want to ask, if possible, in that position description, that we include a really heavy emphasis on diversity, inclusion, trauma-informed care, restorative justice. I think that officer, I know coming off of your force, is going to have had some of that training, but I just would hope the school district would emphasize that as well. I would appreciate that. So, thanks.
Something we can definitely look into, and I'd put it under the previous category of the win-win that you were talking about. I mean, this is something that I'm very much excited about.
Well,
Yes.
any more questions?
No, go ahead.
Is this, would you title it also a safety officer?
That's one of the roles that they'd fill, but we're pretty married to the idea of a community resource officer. I mean,
When I listen to the news, all over the country, there are examples of where things have gone on.
Sure. I mean, that's one of the things that they would be responsible for when they're at the schools. They're going to be that quote-unquote good guy with a gun that you hear in the media.
What about any funding from the state of Wisconsin?
Right now, we're looking, the discussions we've had with the school district, it would be absorbed through their Fund 80.
Is that state funding? No.
Yeah. So previously in the last position I was, so this is actually exciting as well is we actually in Marshall created a school resource officer, basically the same thing. So when I was there, I worked on the memorandum of understanding that went to the school district, and then also the job description as well. So when Chief and I met, we actually had the opportunity to kind of look at that. And it's, basically kind of hitting a lot of the points that you talked about, where it specifically talks about safety. The job description hits a lot of those points. The main funding source, and I think the school district can kind of talk about this is pretty much about 2 years ago. The state, because of a lot of, to your point, Ken, a lot of the situations that were occurring or continued to be occurring, they set aside a bunch of funding that basically could be used as either going towards the creation of a school resource officer, or I think the other opportunity was geared towards security cameras in all the school districts, and that's that Fund 80. Is a lot of that funding came out of there. So that's where this opportunity is coming from, is because the state set aside all this funding mechanism to try to go towards that.
Thank you.
A question. Platteville High School had a school resource officer at some point in time. Do you know why they went away from it?
That was over 20 years ago that we had an officer assigned up there. And at one point, there were the now defunct COPS grants, and there was, it was discussed about Platteville receiving one of those, where the first year the COPS funding would pay the full salary, and then you'd kind of be weaned off of that. And it was determined that we wouldn't go that route. But I mean, the last time we had a SRO, school resource officer, was over 20 years ago.
I remember that because my son was in school, and I did not find it effective because that individual, or the training was more aggressive than I anticipate this one to be. This was obviously, like you said, over 20 years ago. So I'm looking forward to it, just because it's time. It's just plain time.
We're kinder, gentler.
Yes, yes, correct, I agree with you.
Speak. Can she register to speak?
Speak, sure. Okay.
And I can fill out a card if you need to.
Okay. You have to give your name and your address.
Hi, my name is Ashley Lynn Snyder. I live on 25 Maple Drive in Platteville, Wisconsin. I've been a substitute teacher for, it's going on my 3rd year now. I work in multiple school districts. I've worked at Iowa Grant District. I currently work at Lancaster, Southwest School District, which is like Hazel Green, and Mineral Point School District. So I cover a lot of districts in Grant County. And I'm excited to hear that they want to add a police officer to be able to be there for the students and the teachers, and to help hopefully de-escalate situations, to be there as a resource for everyone to feel safer, and to help just communicate with each other better with certain things, to make sure that if there is something going on at the school, then you have more response time, you have more communication with officers and with people who can actually get help to the school a lot quicker. So, thank you.
I have a couple more questions or comments. What about consideration of zero tolerance? Madison had a situation on that recently, school board. Are you familiar with that? Will
In
that
what
be
regard?
covered here? Are you familiar with
Yeah, I
that?
know. I believe I know what you're talking about, but keep going. It's so that.
But anyway, that to me took things to an extreme as far as what they did. So I guess you can discuss with the chief.
Yeah, so I know. So that was a lot of the discussions we had in Marshall as far as what the policy would be. So typically in the memorandum of understanding, and that's something that we'll kind of have to discuss with the school district, is that generally that officer is under the direction of the police force. So it's their call. It's not a question of can the school district say they don't want something to occur? That officer is basically trained that whatever that incident is, they handle it without question. So that's usually written into the policies that I've seen. But again, those will have to be the discussions where, if this moves forward, chief, myself, and obviously the school district will have to look into, what all that means.
And on that topic, their role, the CRO's role, would not be to be the in-school disciplinarian. They would typically handle issues that now, if the police were called to handle those, they're not going to be the ones, again, acting as the disciplinarian in lieu of the school. They're still going to have their function. The officer's going to have their function, and together they'll achieve what the desired outcomes.
And the other one I wanted to find out about is bullying. Now that, the school board, I think, has discussed that, I believe, recently. And so is this person going to be involved in any of that as far as observation, what's going on?
And again, they're going to be present in the school. If it's something that rises beyond something that the school staff would typically address, I mean, where a behavior that would rise to disorderly conduct, where the schools would normally request our assistance, then they would be involved with that. If it was something that didn't rise to that level, then it's still going to be the prerogative of the school district.
Thank you.
All right, so, nice collaboration again with the school district. I think that's great. The last item, year-end 2019 progress update. Nicola.
So I got a couple of items here. We're all tired, it's late, so I'll make this brief. But the first item is information and discussion, just for review. The second item is information and discussion, but we'll come back for action at the next meeting. So I just think it's really important that as we've concluded the year, and me even being up here, as you know, is just still slight hangover from the transition. This would normally be Adam's role, but it's a bit unfair to stick him up here and ask him to talk about 2019. So I'm going to do that real briefly here. But I do think it's important that we review and remember what we've accomplished. We accomplish a phenomenal amount every year as a city. And I just want to review that with you briefly. We do have a year in review presentation that was played at the holiday breakfast, and that should be available online on the website soon for everybody to enjoy. But the big ones for 2019 was phase 1 and 2 of the City Hall remodel, which you are seeing as you walk through here. The Legion Park Events Center, at the beginning of the year, it was a conversation, it was the beginning of fundraising, and look where we are now. So that's amazing what has been accomplished there. Completion of the park's master plan was a big process that concluded in 2019. Camp Street's sidewalk connection was completed in 2019. Lead service line replacement program was wrapping up. Well 6 came online in 2019. Water and sewer street projects on Pitt Street and Alden Avenue. Some big wastewater treatment plant projects. Museum projects also completed in 2019. The roundabout landscaping that we're all very excited to see in the spring. Come on, spring. Complete street reconstruction projects on Court Street and Lewis Street. And some deferred projects from 2018, the Our Town Grant Community Plan and the Chalk and Cheese Fest, first phase of the new park signs, and let's see, what else were the big ones? The second Community Involvement Fair, the first annual State of the City, and there were some things that we did delay pending our new city manager that we'll be doing in 2020. We did complete the housing study in 2019, and Ruxton was finished and occupied, which is very exciting. let's see, what else? The TID4 extension took place to support affordable housing programs, which will be implemented in 2020. And we updated the long-range financial plan with the help of ALIS. So those were some of the big points of 2019. So I think we can all cheer for that. And then I just wanted to touch base on 2020 city goals. So as you, I'm sure, remember, or most of you, there's some of you weren't here during this process, including myself, but the Common Council did partner with city staff to create a 3-year strategic plan which spanned from 2017 to 2019. And the plan identified 6 priority areas, which were modified a little bit in 2019. And a new strategic planning process was scheduled to be conducted in 19, but was postponed due to the transition in city managers. However, it was important that we still have some goals for 2020, and we also wanted to fit those goals in into the categories that we had for the previous strategic plan. And so those are what you see before you. And again, we will be asking the council to act on accepting these goals at the next meeting. You can see there all of the CIP that we talked about, that's in terms of city infrastructure are listed here. And then a couple of business items, some marketing items. We have some connections that we're working towards in 2020, including the community resource officer position. And then also you'll see there some items under housing, employee relations, and some other items as well. So I would just encourage you over the next couple of weeks to read through those and be familiar with them for the next meeting where you'll be asked to accept them. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other comments, questions? Otherwise, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
Second, and we'll vote.
Nichols?
Yes.
Stockhausen?
Yes.
Arts?
Yes.
Killian?
Yes.
Klein?
Yes.
Shanley?
Yes.
Motion carries.